In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about childhood anxiety. So, what it is, how it looks different from adults, and what we can do to help our kids who may be struggling with it. Welcome to Phases, a child development podcast. I'm Dr. Courtney, a clinical and educational psychologist with over 15 years of experience.
And I'm Scott, Courtney's husband and professional podcaster.
We have two little ones of our own, and we know how busy life can get. So we're here to help you navigate every phase of the parenting journey.
Join me in learning from Courtney's expertise in parenting neurodiverse and neurotypical kids in a non-judgmental, fun, and evidence-based way.
We're so glad you're here. Make sure you subscribe and share with any parents in your life. So before we get into all the talk about anxiety, what that looks like, I had an interesting idea. We'll try it out. So I wanted to introduce a segment that I would like to call Internet Parenting
Oh,
Trends.
yeah.
Do you have a better name for that?
I think we can workshop it, but I like the intent.
That's not my strength. It's coming up with creative names.
Yeah.
But anyway, so just scrolling on Instagram, I found some really interesting like parenting hot takes or things that are trending. And I just thought it would be fun to like talk about them and then maybe give it a rating like 0 to 10,
Okay.
how good we think this is.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one today, it's going viral on TikTok apparently. And it involves parents shouting, Jessica, but they're like screaming it. So, Jessica, when their child is having a meltdown. And these
Okay.
seem to be like preschool to toddler age kids. So they're having like kind of those nonsensical meltdowns where, it's like about a banana that like was peeled incorrectly,
Yeah.
and so they're melting down and then they shout, Jessica. And all of a sudden, like that, it snaps their child out of their meltdown.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
Well, one, does it work? Two, why Jessica?
Why Jessica? Well, so it does work because you see the kids every time they like snap out of it and then they
Huh.
start looking around them for like, where is Jessica? Who is Jessica?
Who is what's up with Jessica? Yeah. I'm wondering that myself, honestly.
Yeah. So do you think you would try that?
Do I think I would try it? I think I would forget which name is the name I'm supposed to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. So I don't think, obviously, with this trend, it doesn't matter
Mm,
that the name is Jessica. I think that name just kind of like stuck and took off.
yeah.
But it does work. And here's why it works. So when we talk about like de escalation techniques, when a child is like totally dysregulated, they're like very highly escalated, right? Meaning
Mhm.
that like their behaviors are bigger and sort of out of control, meaning like they can't control it and neither can you, right? They're in the
Yeah.
middle of a meltdown. So saying a random name or what I've learned in like different trainings, saying like calling them a name that is not theirs.
Mhm.
So maybe calling them Jessica when their name is Lucy or something like that.
Yeah.
It just snaps them out of it because it distracts them and it shifts their attention somewhere else instead of where it is on that meltdown.
Huh.
Isn't that interesting?
It's interesting, and I would never have considered that. That's the type of thing that I would have heard and been like, "There's no way that works." Or,
Well, it does. It
yeah,
does work. Yeah, totally. I don't know, like, if you continued that every day, if it would still continue to work because I think the kids would figure out, obviously,
yeah,
like, there is no Jessica.
yeah. Right. There is no Jessica. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does work. I think it's like a good temporary thing. Like if your child is having a meltdown over like a banana peeled incorrectly, or I mean, just some of the things like their tower fell down. You think
Yeah.
about all those things that would like set your preschooler or toddler off, and they just don't make sense.
They don't make sense. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
instead of like sitting with them through their feelings and like going through all of that, I think this technique could be helpful in a pinch, especially if you're in like a tricky situation like the grocery store or something like that and you need to like get out of there quickly.
Yeah.
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 Although obviously you're not shouting Jessica.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
She's dead.
That's so funny.
So what would you give this?
Um, I would give this.
Yeah, from 0 to 10. Like 10 being that's the best, like that's clutch. And 0 being like, I would never do that. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I would give this 7 dogs on my lap out of 10.
Yeah,
For people who cannot see right now, Courtney
yeah,
has
a little Sammy
a dog on her lap,
here.
really peacefully resting. We can hear him having a nice little rest right now.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it today. So, the topic that we're going to be covering today is the hidden ways that anxiety can show up for kids. You had a little personal story to lead us off with. Do you want to?
Yeah. So, we over here at Faces and in our family in general, we are definitely like a family of empaths and we're all like pretty sensitive, deep feeling individuals. So, by we, I mean us and our children. And so, we really understand anxiety here and
Oh, yeah.
what that looks like and how it shows up in as many forms. So, I thought as an adult, like I had a really good handle on it, but it's so, like, deeply wired. I have learned as a parent in my, like, DNA and just kind of, like, the fiber of who I am
Yeah.
because I see it in our kids.
Hmm.
Like, they both really, have moments of, like, big feelings and anxiety that I don't even know that I'm necessarily, like, modeling to them, but it is just there in their
Inherent. Yeah.
DNA. Yeah. Yeah, and as we'll learn, like, some of it is genetic and some of it is environmental too. So I'm sure, we're modeling all kinds of things that we don't realize, but there is such a huge like genetic component that you can't change. All you can do is teach them the proper strategies. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So, what we're going to talk about in this episode is really what anxiety looks like from ages like 6 to 12 when it becomes something as a parent that we really need to pay attention to, and what actually helps because it can often feel like, wow, that's a lot. And it feels like maybe difficult to handle, especially when you don't have a handle on your own anxiety. So let's get into the first section here. Let's talk about childhood anxiety in general, what it is. Is it something that is is it just kids being kids and worrying, or is it something that's very real here?
Yeah, so definitely like all individuals experience anxiety at some point in their lives. Like we all worry about different things, right? But usually it's about big things that are anxiety inducing, like
Yeah,
a test or like a big event, like a sports game or something like that, where there's pressure.
yeah.
Right? But anxiety really comes into play when your child is worrying about things like pretty much every day or like most of the time.
Mm,
Right. And it's starting to affect them socially, like their confidence, or maybe it's like really showing up at home where they need a lot of reassurance, or it's affecting them at school.
yeah.
Right. So it needs to be those things for it to be considered anxiety. And of course, there's like different levels to that too. Like a lot of us are functional anxiety people, right? Where we
Mhm.
can like go out and about and like carry on through our day, but we have worries and we figured out strategies, but sometimes the worries are kind of like louder,
Yeah,
right? And then there's more like clinical anxiety. So we'll probably be talking more about that, like functional anxiety, where I think most kids will probably fall
yeah,
that have
yeah.
anxiety, and then what to do if you have a child that, maybe needs some more support.
Okay.
So, to be clear, anxiety, it's not necessarily like a problem, right? It's just that your brain is like hypersensitive to potential danger,
Mm,
right? So it's a protective flaw.
yeah,
It is designed to help keep you safe,
yeah,
right? Because you think about like the cavemen days, right? Or our ancestors, anxiety was there. That's how your brain has been formed in your amygdala to prevent you from getting eaten,
yeah.
right? To
I don't
stay
want to. Yeah,
alive.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel that.
Yeah, right. But now as time has evolved, and like our world has evolved, sadly our brains have not, right? So our brains still perceive various threats like oh, I might miss a deadline or, I forgot to do this as a bear,
Yeah,
right? Or like some big threat that like could potentially kill you.
yeah. I would like to think that my brain is evolved, Cordy. So,
You
sadly,
have a very nice brain,
I do.
Scott.
I do have a lot of
Yes.
anxiety, though. So yes, yeah,
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 right. Right. So but you're obviously like logically that doesn't make sense, right? It's not the same. Like a missed deadline
yeah.
is the same as like getting eaten. but that's how your brain interprets a lot of worries. And
Okay.
so I saw this analogy that you can talk to your kids about too, where your brain is kind of like a smoke alarm. And the smoke alarm is like very sensitive, meaning like it's going to go off when maybe there's like burnt toast instead of like an actual fire.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. I thought that was interesting because it's just like it's a more sensitive alarm than it should be.
Yeah, that actually hits for me. It might not hit for our kids because ours don't go off that often. But when I was, you might not know this, in my parents' house, the smoke alarm goes off like half the time they use the oven. So they use the oven, they open the oven, and then the smoke alarm goes off because there's one like right there, and it's super sensitive.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
they actually got those swapped out eventually, but my entire childhood with the smoke alarm would we waving towels around it because it's like, oh wait, we're just cooking again. Yes,
Right,
yeah,
right. Oh, that's funny. Okay, yeah. So we talked a lot about anxiety, like what it is, and obviously there can be like different types of anxiety too. I think today we'll talk mostly about generalized anxiety or worries about a lot of different things.
yeah.
But there's so many variations of anxiety that we can get into if it's of interest.
Yeah. So what makes it into a disorder versus just being anxiety? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's when it is worries more days than not. It's affecting your child in some area of their life, like at school or at home or socially. And so, some of the things you might see, which are different from adults, right? Because adults, you think about anxiety as like worries, or maybe you have like a stomach ache
Mhm.
or just general tightness. For kids, it can be a big one is irritability,
Yeah.
right? Kids that are just like constantly like fighting you and like slamming the door and like talking back. That doesn't necessarily mean it's anxiety, but it can be. Things like muscle tension, having a hard time concentrating at school, and then being easily tired, being more restless or like on edge,
Yeah.
or having trouble sleeping, right? So, kids really, to get a diagnosis, they only need one of those things.
Yeah.
And then it has to show up throughout their daily life, as we talked about. So, we know anxiety in kids, it is. It's pretty much about 50% genetic and 50% environmental.
Mm.
So it's both factors. And typically, right, there's a parent in the home that also has anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like most
Yeah,
things.
just like most things, right?
Yeah, but it does look different because sometimes like with adults they can clearly articulate, oh, I'm feeling worried about this, right? But kids can't necessarily do that. Not all kids can. They don't have that insightfulness. And so for kids it may show up as like needing constant reassurance. Like our son does that a lot. Like,
Yes,
do
needing
you
reassurance,
think,
yes.
yeah, do you think this thing I made is really great, mom? And he'll ask me that over and over and over
Mhm.
again. Or like when I was younger, I used to like check in and ask, well, what's going to happen on this day? Or, does this look like it's going away if I had like a rash or
Mhm.
something like that? But I would ruminate.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's a big one. Or, you might see like stomach aches. A big one is avoidance in kids. So, like wanting to hide or
Mm.
like procrastinate, maybe do something else. And the other thing too that you tend to see is big behaviors. And so you might think, oh, this child is just like misbehaving. They're
Mhm.
just not listening. But really, underneath the surface, have you seen that like glacier metaphor?
Oh, yeah.
You have. Okay. That's a really good one where, like, at the top of the surface, you see all these
Iceberg.
things. Oh, iceberg. Yeah.
Yes.
That makes more sense. Yeah. So you see all these things at the top of the iceberg, right? Like behaviors, meltdowns, crying, etc. And you may interpret it as one thing, but underneath the surface, it's all of these like deeper feelings like anxiety,
Yeah.
right? So we have to think about that with kids. Like, is my kid misbehaving or is this anxiety?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of these things, just like most things that we talk about on the show, are the same types of ways you see this present in non-children, in adults.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. But I do wanna stress it can look a little bit different too.
Sure. Yeah. It's just so funny just listening to this though. I'm thinking like, oh, I can recognize now sometimes when you might not know this, but like living with Courtney, you get a lot of insight into generally how people work. So I've learned to look at things differently now when I'm experiencing someone who is exhibiting some odd behavior. You're looking at it as like insecurity and anxiety or this and that instead of just like, oh, this person's rude, you know? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So in this childhood age, this 6 to 12, this is how anxiety can show up. So sometimes you might see like school refusal or avoidance, like we talked about.
Hmm.
Sometimes it can be perfectionism, right? Like erasing and rewriting or needing to do things over and over again because they felt like maybe they didn't do a good job. And then the somatic complaints, like we talked about, like headaches or stomach aches or feeling nauseous. And then the irritability, so being easily annoyed or snappy, or
Mm.
my favorite one in our son is when he rolls his eyes a lot.
Oh,
He's just like, oh,
uh,
and some of that is like normal
yeah, yeah,
kid
yeah, yeah. That's
behavior.
normal kid behavior. Yeah.
But, when that's paired with like talking back, it could be
Mm.
anxiety. Yeah.
Okay, so we see how it presents, right? But you have here that it could be a bit of a cycle. So,
Yeah.
as somebody who experiences anxiety, I can understand like the feedback loop around anxiety. But what does this cycle for kids look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So it is similar. And I think about, you've heard of CBT, right? Cognitive behavior therapy.
Yes,
So
well, I
in
have, but the audience might not have.
Okay, yeah. So in cognitive behavior therapy, we have a triangle
Hmm.
and it refers to thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, right? So usually for kids, there is a trigger, something that they're worried about,
Mm.
right? Um, and it could be like any of those things that I talked about. Like, well, let's take perfectionism as an example. So, what if I get it wrong? Right? That would be terrible. Like
Mm.
if I made a mistake on the test or I was up there and I was doing a math problem, you remember how you used to have to do that in the whiteboard in
Oh,
front of the
yeah.
kids?
Yeah.
And what if I made a mistake and like everyone laughed? That would be like the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the trigger or the thought,
Okay. For me, it
right?
was reading in front of the class when you had to read like a couple of
Yeah.
sentences. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So then that would induce specific feelings,
Mm.
right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm so worried about that. I don't want to do it. Maybe there's, feelings like you want to hide or you want to avoid. And then that leads to behaviors,
Okay.
right? Of, feeling tight, um, of hiding, et cetera, melting down, refusing to start, needing that reassurance, all of those things,
Yeah.
right? So it's just that endless cycle, and then one reinforces the other, right?
Hmm.
So you have those behaviors, and then it connects back to that thought, and it just makes that loop more strong and more ingratiated into how the child is and how they're acting at that time.
Yeah.
So kids are often looking for like short-term relief, right? Like anybody would want to,
Sure.
escape from that discomfort. But if you do that, then that, provides that short-term relief, but it causes long-term effects,
Yeah.
right? Because now you've learned like, oh, if I just avoid or if I hide, then I won't have to
Yeah.
feel this like discomfort or worry.
Doesn't that encapsulate so many things that people get into in their
Oh yeah.
lives? Like I know this show is about parenting and kids, but I feel like we could all learn from that right there, that recognizing those patterns that we establish ourselves. Like what are we introducing in our lives to get out of a little bit of discomfort just with short term fixes for small discomforts. How is that affecting our lives? I think that's
Oh yeah, for
poignant.
sure.
Yeah.
But that's just the human condition, right? We're
Yes.
often kind of short-sighted, like, oh well,
Oh,
it's gonna
totally.
go away right
Yeah.
now, and I don't have to worry about it until later,
Hmm.
right? That's a bigger conversation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think. But yeah, you're so right. So we want to prevent our kids from doing that as much as possible. And we want to like build in that confidence and resilience. And essentially, they need to sit through those
Mm.
feelings in order to ride that wave. And then we need to build in coping strategies,
Okay.
right? So we want to prevent that short term escape as much as possible.
Okay. And when you say coping, I know that like you might not know this, but in modern internet language, the word cope is often used as like a negative, like, oh, cope with this.
Oh,
Um, when you say coping in this way, just to clear it up for our younger listeners or people who are clued in on that type of thing, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so essentially it's just tools, right, to deal with the feelings. That's what in psychology we're using coping as like a positive strategy to help deal with whatever you're struggling with.
Okay, so the next time somebody online says cope to you, you should be like, that's a positive strategy. Yes,
Gosh,
I
I
will
really need
cope.
a lesson on slang.
Yeah.
Maybe we could just do a 101.
I will cope. Thank you. Yes.
That's a new
I'm
one
using
for
my
me. I know
tools.
cook now.
Yes.
Cook.
Oh, yeah,
That's
because
all I hear about.
all we hear
It's
about is cooking.
cooking.
Yes.
Yeah. But coping, I did not know. That's a good
Interesting.
one.
Yes.
Yeah. So, parents, of course, it's really hard to watch your child struggle, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. And so often you're trying to jump in and help, but the help in the long term is doing more damage than good,
Hmm.
right? So we're doing things like over reassuring, right? Oh, you're fine.
Yeah,
Stop.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah, yeah.
okay,
That's
right?
easy to do.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
So
right?
easy. Yeah.
Yeah, cuz you feel like you're helping, but it's like a short term stop, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's okay. Stop. There's avoidance accommodations, like just doing it for them, right? If they're struggling with their homework, maybe you just do it for them or do more than you should, or you tell them they can skip it, right? Which isn't great.
Yeah.
Some parents also like push too hard. So they'll say, like, just do it, or
Mm,
you can do it, or it's not that big of a deal, right? Or they get angry
yeah.
because they're frustrated. And then the other one might be like dismissing feelings, right? So you're making this into something that it's not, right? Or you're turning this into a bigger deal than it is, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
dismissing your child's feelings. And so that doesn't work because like none of those strategies work long term because they don't help your child actually deal with the feelings that they're
Hmm.
experiencing. It makes your child feel alone in their feelings like, "Oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. This is bad." Right?
Yeah.
And they feel shame because of that. And then the other thing is, the worry is still there, right? It might temporarily shut it off,
Hmm.
but the worry is still there in the background and they don't have the skills to deal with it. So then they learn over time, like either I'm doing a bad job or I'm incapable. And then that decreases self confidence
Yeah.
and just makes the worry bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So if that stuff doesn't work, what actually works?
Yeah, so the best thing is to name it and validate it, right?
Okay.
So saying things like, this feels really scary for
Mm,
you, or it seems like you're really worrying about that a lot. I
hmm.
wonder if you're having some anxiety,
Yeah.
right? And what that's doing is it's providing context for your child to say, like, oh, these feelings that you're experiencing, they are something,
Yeah.
right? It's anxiety, it's worry. It's not just like bad behavior or that you're a bad kid.
Mm,
It's worry and it's normal. And for a lot of kids, like I said, they don't have the tools yet to be insightful and to understand like what I'm experiencing is worry. So like one
yeah.
of the first things we teach in therapy is how to recognize different feelings in the body, like how they show up and to give them a name.
Yeah.
Because again, you have to name it to tame it.
I love that because, yeah, I just think about how not much different my life would be. But like, it's like the moment that I learned so many things from you about these things, it did feel like they were easier to manage. And that's as an adult. And
Really?
I know as a kid, it's different because like you said, they don't have the same insightfulness. But it's like, I wonder, like, if we're growing up in an era now where the kids are growing up and they're able to understand so much about themselves in the world that they'll be able to handle these things better than maybe we would, who are just, you know, having intense anxiety and not able to recognize that.
Yeah, right. That's that whole concept right now online about just reparenting yourself, right? And
Mhm.
then in turn, you can parent your kids differently. So
Okay.
I hope that. So the next thing is we want to do gradual exposure, essentially baby steps, right? So take this big thing that they're worried about
Yeah.
and break it down into smaller steps. Right. So whether that's like, oh, we're just going to do this first part, we're just going to write your name on the homework and then we're going to read the problem,
Okay.
right? If they're worried about homework. Or another thing I like to do, even for our ADHD kids, is to use a timer. So like a visual timer is what we call essentially like a kitchen timer.
Okay.
And you turn it on, you say, okay, we're just gonna work for 10 minutes. And then when that timer goes off, you get to take a little break.
Mm,
Right. And so it takes this big thing that feels like too much and it breaks it down into smaller steps.
yeah.
Right. Now, so this is homework. If they have like social anxiety or things like that, you would treat that a little bit differently, but you can kind of get the idea. You want to take like a big concept like doing a big task and then just break it down into concrete steps so that they can tackle it. It's just like your to-do list,
Oh, yeah.
right? When you feel overwhelmed about your
Yeah.
work, you write everything down and then you check it off one by one. It's the same concept.
Yeah, I've been feeling overwhelmed this past week, and I did that yesterday. I organized and cleaned up my to-do list and made some priorities and
Yeah.
stuff, and I felt so much better all day. So I definitely understand that. The next thing you have here is to build confidence, which really tracks because when kids are confident about what they're working on, they're obviously not going to feel as anxious about it, right?
Right. Yeah. So if you're breaking it down, if you're giving them breaks, then they will be able to feel more confident because they can likely tackle it better.
Hmm.
Sometimes they need you to sit next to them to like accomplish a task, or they just need your support. That's called like built in scaffolding. But again, you want to emphasize the effort that they're doing, not the outcome, which we've like
Yeah,
talked
yeah,
about ad nauseum. But that will help build confidence that they can handle like this big, scary thing
mm,
because that's the only way you build it with anxiety is by doing things that are hard,
yeah.
right? And doing like being able to accomplish it.
Yeah, that tracks. Okay, so let's get into coping because I want to learn about coping here.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of things you can do. I love to do like a visual menu for my younger kids. So, you can do this so easily now with AI. You just ask it to make like a nice visual coping skills menu for you. And then the child can pick like which thing they want to do. And it's so great. But, a couple things that I often recommend. Of course, our favorite is breathing.
Yeah.
A lot of kids don't like doing this, but you can make it fun. So there's the basic breathing, like the box breathing, where you're just tracing a box. Breathe in for, breathe out for, breathe in
Yeah.
for, yep, etc. Or the 4-7-8 breathing, which is I think more scientifically backed, where you're breathing in for 4, holding for 7, breathing out for 8. So breathing
Oh,
out
wow.
really
Yeah.
slowly, and it's like your diaphragm is a balloon. So you want to do like that big belly breathing and not the shallow breathing,
Yeah.
which contributes to panic. And I love like Googling YouTube or having meditations too with this because some kids do better like responding to a visual or following along with like a video
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
breathing.
Totally.
Another one you can do is to externalize the anxiety. So a fun one is to give it a name. So
Mhm.
there's lots of books about like the worry monster and calling anxiety like a monster, and you have like a picture of it that way. You can also just give it a funny name, like, oh, that's just Bob.
Yeah.
Bob's back and he's kind of
Yeah.
like a rain cloud and he's over here and he has all these worries, but we don't have to let Bob take over. He's just a voice in your
I'm
head.
gonna tell you right now that Bob makes me anxious, just saying Bob as a
Why?
uh because if you watch Twin Peaks,
Oh.
the he was kind of like a metaphor. I don't know what he was, but he was a scary individual. And he was kind of like this representation of this trauma or something, but he
Oh,
was a
okay,
scary looking
okay,
guy
wow.
and his name was Bob, I think. I believe so. But hearing that, I just like see this Twin Peaks image and it's very scary.
Okay, well, yeah, come up with a better name then. Have your child come up with the name, that's even better, right? But anyway,
Yes.
it's externalizing it so your child can start to understand that distinction between the worries are like a voice or that protective smoke alarm, and it's not something I have to listen to,
Yeah.
right? It's just my brain being sensitive.
Okay. And then next you have grounding.
Yeah, so I love this one for like our ADHD kids or our sensory kids who need more like tactile touch.
Mm,
So this one, you pick up an object and you use your five senses. So you have your child feel the object. It could be literally anything, but I like stuffies, especially like those weighted plushies. Target sells those everywhere
oh, the
now.
weighted plushie is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Weighs a ton. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's one I don't even have on here, but weighted things are great, but having like a plushie or just something and you ask your child, "Okay, tell me how does this feel?"
Mm,
Okay, so they describe how it feels. Okay, how does it smell? Right? How does it look? What do you see? And you break that down into all of the five senses. And obviously, some of them won't apply, and your kids might think it's funny. Like, how does a stuffed animal
Yeah,
smell?
yeah.
But what it's doing is it's taking your child away from that future thinking, which is really what anxiety is. It's worries about the future or what could happen. And it's grounding them or bringing them down into the present moment
Yeah.
of what's happening right now. And that's the concept of mindfulness, right? Is just being present. So it's like a nice tactile way to do that.
Yeah, and the last one you have here is exercising.
Yeah. So exercise is great, as we know, for adults, but any type of like cardio that your kids can get. We have a trampoline in the backyard. So our son likes to bounce on that. And that just gets the heart moving and provides that like much needed dopamine. Or, you can go for a walk, you can stretch, you can do yoga. There's so many ways to incorporate that, but that's a really good one too.
Yeah, another one you have here is to co-regulate, which is I think this is a reoccurring theme that we have here with parents is that the parent needs to control their nervous system and their way of being. Well, maybe not before, but like in coordination with trying to control their child's, right?
Yeah, right. So we know that kids borrow your calm and you set the tone as the parent,
Yeah.
right? So it's really important for you to stay calm so that your kids can de escalate and bring themselves down to a calmer state rather than you raising up and escalating your kid even further. So that's really important.
Yeah. And then the last one you have here is daily practice.
Yeah, so this concept can be tricky. I always tell it to parents and I do wonder like how many actually do it because it's hard to do in your busy day to
Oh,
day.
yeah.
But it's just like anything else. It's like an exercise,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. You're working a muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like an exercise. So what you're doing is you're practicing 10 minutes a day of consistent calm,
Hmm.
right? Whether that is mindfulness, deep breathing, meditation, it can be anything, but your child is practicing it for 10 minutes. And then the idea is that when they are in a state of heightened anxiety, those skills that they've practiced take over
Yeah.
and they help them through that difficult time rather than not giving them any practice and expecting them to be able to do that. So that just helps to build independence because obviously you can't be there every time your child's worried. You can't pull
Right.
out your menu and say, "What do you want to do?" Your child has to be able to do that independently and they need to build those skills over time. So regular practice helps with that.
Okay. So we have recognized this is a problem. We've done our best to mitigate it. We have been working with our child and all these things, yet the anxiety piece is potentially getting worse, or we don't have a handle on it, or it is like causing major issues. When do you know um, that you need to go and see somebody?
Yeah, so this is a tough one, but I want to encourage parents to think about it as providing extra support for your child and just giving them, an extra adult, extra tools, etc., rather than therapy being a problem. And I hope that we've gotten past that stage of therapy being, a negative
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
for
Yeah.
sure. So when you want to consider that is when you've tried all of these things and your child is still really struggling. You also may want to consider it if your child is really having a hard time going to school or they are really struggling to do just kind of normal activities like being around other kids or like transitioning, and you're having a hard time as a parent and you need more resources. If it's causing your family a ton of distress because, again, they're taking up so much of your energy, needing that emotion regulation support. And then also, just if your gut says something's off and hey,
Yeah.
I struggled with anxiety, I have sought out therapy as an adult, I could have benefited from it as a child, so maybe my child could benefit from it too.
Yeah.
So any of those things, or if the school is coming to you, obviously, and saying, your child is really anxious, they need some more, they would benefit from more support.
Yeah.
So those are times when you would consider a therapist. And a good therapist, ideally, is working with you as the parents as well as the child.
Yes, because as we've learned, that's a major piece.
Yes, right. And you want to make sure you as parents are on the same page. You're using the right type of communication and supports to help your child through their anxiety and you're not
Mhm.
making it worse.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's do big takeaways
Okay,
here. I
yeah.
know one of the big things that we talk about on the show is that we're going to give you a lot of information and hopefully it's not too much. So we want you to take little things and apply little things when you think about them and instill habits by just trying to learn something and then maybe coming back to episodes if you've accomplished things and then want to continue growing based on what we've talked about here. But what do you have for us to close us out here?
Yeah, so again, we know anxiety, it is a safety mechanism, but it's highly treatable and we can help our kids with those skills. These are just our more sensitive kids who are more sensitive to the world and they need extra supports to show up in their best way. So they need to learn how to face these skills rather than to hide from it or escape it. And so, what I would love to know is, after listening to all of this, does this resonate with you? And would you like to have more episodes on more like niche topics with anxiety? Because we're talking about really generalized anxiety, but would it be helpful to hear about, anxiety with neurodivergent kids or like specific types of anxiety, like social anxiety? Or OCD, that type of thing, so that's what I would love to know.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and what about resources for us? Do you have
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah, so I have a few. I love Go Noodle.
Okay.
It's just an online educational website and it has different guided videos. There's like exercise videos, but they have a really great emotion regulation section. And for the younger kids, especially, it's really good for meditation and breathing and things like that. So you can sign up, gonoodle.com. I love for younger kids too in this age, 6 to about 10, the What to Do When You Worry Too Much. We'll link this in our show notes, but this is a really great guided activity book that is rooted in that cognitive behavior therapy by Don Huebner. It's excellent. So I love that one. And then if you are looking for more resources as a parent, the gold standard book that we always recommend is Freeing Your Child from Anxiety by Tamar Chansky. So those are some great resources. Check them out in our show notes.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Court. I do. I think it's like one of these things where we all know about anxiety, but I do think like you never think about the roots of it and kids having anxiety or any of that. You think like, oh, this is just something us as adults deal with. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for all of this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, as always, we will see you in the next phases.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Phases. Make sure you subscribe and share with any parents in your life.
And if you have any questions for Dr. Courtney, head on over to phases.fm/questions and ask a question for the doctor.